You know, I think what we're going to do, talking about education, I'm going to invite a buddy of mine here over here now, and I'm going to ask him to sit over here. Maybe you guys can just squeeze down just a little bit. And I'm going to ask my friend Reid Stowe to join us, and who is able to give us another educational perspective of life from an adventure and a travel involvement that he partook in for the last, I think, 20 years. So, Reid, we're going to, if you could just maybe join us over here. Says Reid Stowe, who broke the world's record for a sailorman, yes? And thank you, Reid. Why don't you grab that microphone? And I don't know if you have to. Okay, Reid's a professional. He's, especially lately, Reid has been covered worldwide in the press for his longest voyage at sea, 1,000 days at sea. Hello, Reid.
1,152 days.
To be exact, okay. So in your venture, you know that number because to do what you did took planning, it took confidence, it took courage, it took vision, it took passion, it took being, you can't go out on sea, which is also a very dangerous place to be, unless you're prepared. It's the Boy Scout, truest adventure of all adventures. So tell us, give the young people here some idea of why you did what you did, and how you got to be sitting here 1,152 days later, by far a good friend of Good News Broadcast. And so maybe we can learn about empowerment of one's spirit.
All of those things. That's a big question he started there. Why did I do what I did? Well, ever since I was a child, I was always on an adventure, and I always liked wild adventure of all things, and I always loved the ocean. And our family had a beach cottage in North Carolina that my granddad and father and uncles built. So when I was a baby, I grew up around my dad and grandfather and uncles building this big house on the intercoastal waterway just behind the beach. We could see the sand dunes. It was in the pine trees, and our family built a beach cottage there. And we kind of camped out at first, but the house grew organically as children were born and we got bigger. So I learned about boat building, and when I was in high school, we made surfboards. And so I learned about boats from my dad and granddad and uncles, and then we made our own surfboards. And then I went surfing in Hawaii. And the second time I went back surfing in Hawaii, I met another teenager who had a sailboat. And he and I decided to sail off together. That was a very important time in my life, and my parents have played a very big role in what I did, and I always stress that, because not only did they train me, but they filled me up with love and gave me confidence. And so I said, well, I don't want to go to college. Please mail me my birth certificate so I can go off sailing around the world. So they could have easily said, no, you have to come back and go to college. We're not going to mail you the birth certificate. But they mailed me my birth certificate, and I sailed off into the South Pacific as a teenager. And I spent 1 year out there, and I met some of the greatest sailors in the world at that time that were sailing sailboats and at the stops in these different islands. I met them and became friends with them. So as a teenager, I had these great teachers who taught me. But I was 19 when one of those sailors who was 24 had on board his boat, books by Carl Jung and the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is an important Buddhist book. But it was reading those books that I learned about the mind. And I saw my sailing voyages as a spiritual voyage. And at that time we arrived in New Zealand. I was 19. I could have gotten on the very first Greenpeace expedition. They were going to protest atom bombs. And I said, no, I'm not a protester, I'm a spiritual person. And I could have gotten on a schooner with a bunch of the wildest, greatest party guys. I didn't go with them. I could have gone on a very luxurious yacht that was owned by Errol Flynn. I didn't want the luxury. And there was a racing boat with a racing crew. And I said, none of those things are for me. I'm going to go home and build my own boat and go on a spiritual voyage where I can learn to know myself and the spirit of man. So I went back, and then I went to my granddad and said, can I live at our family beach cottage? That's where I'll build a boat. So my granddad believed in me and supported me, and my parents said, okay. This boat was a very small boat, a little catamaran that weighed 1,400 pounds. No motor, no radio, no electronics, no life raft, no way to call for help, no electricity, no lights. And luckily, my friend, who I met in the South Pacific, who was 24, a guy from Holland, Ivo, came to North Carolina when I finished building the boat, and he said, well, I'm going home to Holland. Why don't we sail the boat across the Atlantic? So I said, okay, we're ready to go. And we never took the boat in the ocean before he and I sailed out across the North Atlantic. And we got way up in the North Atlantic, and even in the summertime it was kind of cold and rough, and we said, well, we can't go to Holland. That's too far for us. We stopped in the Azores, then we stopped in Portugal. And he went home to visit his family. I was 20 years old, and that gave me the first chance to sail alone at sea. And I sailed alone down Portugal, and I wound up in southern Morocco in this fortress, desert fortress, castle crumbling by the sea. I was the only boat in there that wasn't a local fishing boat. And that was a great adventure for me, where I found my spiritual self. It was like a rite of passage, like the Indian nations sent their young men out, and they said, go out in the wilderness and don't come back till you find your spirit power. And I found my spirit power while I was out there alone. We later crossed to southern Brazil and up the Amazon River. And my friend left with his girlfriend to go traveling overland. And I got on a sailboat with my girlfriend, and it was a French sailboat, and we were captured by pirates. In a very same place, very close to where the most famous sailor in the world, Sir Peter Blake, who won every single race there was in every kind of boat, then he became the leader of the new Cousteau Society. And he took his boat into the Amazon River, and he was captured by pirates, but they tried to fight back, and the pirates shot him dead. That was where Peter Blake was killed many years later. But at this particular place, we were captured by pirates. 3 days later, we got away. And my boat was anchored in the pirates' den. And I said, well, that's the end of my boat. And I came down with hepatitis from drinking jungle water. So when we got out of the Amazon, we sailed up to the Caribbean. And I went home to Mom and Dad again. And I recuperated from the hepatitis. It was a very spiritual time for me. I made paintings. I've been a painter all my life. I made paintings and wrote my book. And 4 months later, I said, well, you know, I'm going to go back and get my boat. So that's what I did. I flew back down to the Amazon River, caught a bus out into the jungle, caught a ferry out, and I stole my boat back from the pirates and sailed out. I had many more adventures, but that led the way for me building a bigger boat. So I went to my granddad when I got back and said, now I want to build a big boat. I got my brothers to help me, my cousins, everyone.
It's a real Johnny Depp movie.
And I built the schooner that I have now. And the idea was that this would be a boat that could go anywhere in the world and stay out forever. Just the idea was there. And that was in 1976. And then we finished building the boat in 1978, so the boat is almost 32 years old. And before going to Antarctica in 1987, I said, what can I do next? Because I've been all over the world, I've done all this sailing. I said, I can sail further than anyone in history ever has. I'll sail 1,000 days at sea without coming to shore, without receiving supplies. That was in 1986. And it took me over 20 years before I was able to leave on the voyage that I just made. Now, I did a lot of test voyaging, and I learned how to sail the boat better, and I learned all about food and supplies and the things that I needed to be at sea. I always sailed that big boat with a crew of strong men because I thought I had to, but when I realized there was no men that were going to go with me at all, no one understood. They were all afraid. No one would go with me. So I realized I was going to have to do it by myself. And during those years, I had a couple of women who sailed with me, who Paul also knew because I've known Paul for almost 15 years. I came to New York, and one wonderful lady sailed with me for many years. But after so many years of trying, 6 or 8 years, and having adventures, getting the boat turned upside down, being in great storm, she said, "I'm too afraid to go 1,000 days." So she decided to live on the land, and so then I was searching for another woman, and because I figured, well, there weren't going to be any men that were going to go with me, but a woman was going to fall in love with me and go with me anywhere I would go. That's the story of life. That's sort of what happens a lot of times. You have to figure that when men came to the New World, it was more of a risk for a woman to come with a man to America for the first 200 years, because they had no way to call back to home or go home, or they had to those women had to take a greater risk than the woman who would sail with me for 1,000 days, because as I told her, if anything happens, you can get off the boat. I'll take you near land and you can get off, but I'm going to keep going because I have to go 1,000 days at sea. So I had the boat on West 26th Street in Manhattan, and I always was looking for a girl. Every time I saw a girl that I liked, I said, "Hey, I'm going 1,000 days at sea. Do you want to come?" And some of them thought they did, but they didn't turn out to be too seriously. But I knew Sonya for 2 years before we got together. I wasn't sure that she was right for the voyage. She's a very petite lady, and she's a bit younger than me, but she's very smart. And I didn't know her real inner spirit. But then she came to me and said, "I'm ready to go. I want to go with you." And I started blinking my eyes. I took a double look at her and said, "Well, wow, maybe so." And so we spent a year together, and then we sailed off. And our intention was to do the longest sea voyage in history, to sail 1,000 days without stopping. And she said, "I believe in you. I know you can do it, and I'll be there for you." And we went sailing off into the sea, and the first week we were out, we got hit by a ship. We nearly were killed. We were disabled and floating in the ocean for a month before I could fix the boat. And after I fixed the boat, I didn't even fix it. It couldn't be fixed good enough. But we went on anyway. And we had all kinds of adventures, and Sonya was always a brave, strong girl. She always gave me strength and courage. We always got along good together. We had a great time together. We knew we were doing something good for the world. We were getting a lot of attention. We were sharing with people what we were doing live on the internet. And we got into the Southern Ocean, in the Indian Ocean near Antarctica, and she got so sick she couldn't do anything. And she lost weight really fast, and she looked really sick. I was scared to death. Something was going to happen to her, but we were like thousands of miles from anywhere. And we said, "Wow, we better get you to Australia because we got to get you off the boat because you're so sick." So I emailed a man who I knew. He had the record for the longest sea voyage in history. And I said, "Come out from Australia and save my girlfriend. She has to get off." So we sailed to Australia, and that's what he did. He sailed out from Perth, Australia, and met us offshore. Sonya and I had talked it over. She knew that if she came with me and she couldn't make it, that I was going to keep going. And by then, we were already looking at what we were doing as something that was great and beneficial for the world. And we looked at the greater good of what our lives were all about. And to go on that voyage, we had to do a lot of stuff to our mind to prepare us to do what no humans had ever done before in a lot of different ways. But one of the things was we had to put ourselves in a timeless state where we could live without worrying about time. So once she had to go to shore, she knew she had 2 years to wait for me. So I said, "Well, you know, I'll be coming back." And she said, "Well, I'll wait for you." And she got ashore, and it turned out she was having morning sickness from pregnancy. So she was pregnant. So she went home and lived with her parents in Queens. And then she had a baby that she named Darshen. And she sent me email pictures of her pregnancy and the baby, and we kept in touch, and we said we love each other, we're going to get together when I get back. And I went on to sail over 2 years by myself. And we were ignored by the media the whole way, the major media. It pretty well ignored us the whole trip. They couldn't believe what we were doing was true, even though the whole voyage was satellite verified. We had a unit on the boat that verified our every position. And the time that I spent alone by myself at sea turned out to be the most amazing experience that I've ever had in my life. I've been doing yoga for over 35 years, and I meditate very strongly. I do powerful exercises, and I know about the subconscious, and I know how it is to go out of my mind and connect and become one with nature. And that was how I was able to do it, and how I was able to heal myself. I never got sick once, I never got hurt. And the process of that brought me into touch with becoming one with humanity. And my love for humanity grew, and I sent my love out to humanity, and that was what gave me energy to come, that came back to me, that helped me do the voyage. So I changed the name of the voyage to the Love Voyage. I still had a year to go, and I said, I'm calling this the Love Voyage from now on. And so there were lots of adventures, but I made it back, and I've been back for a month now, only a month, and I'm hardly adjusted. But we're together on the boat, Soanya and Darshen and I. We're over in Hoboken right now. Everything's good on the boat. Our life is wonderful. But I'd say when we got back, as we were communicating with our friends, I said, I'm coming back exactly at 1 o'clock. On Thursday, June the 17th. And they got all the press ready. 35 family members were there. And when I sailed in, and all the media was there, and I hit the dock right on time. They were all there. I hit the dock, and I looked up, and I saw 400 eyes looking at me. At one time, my mind just saw them all. At one time. And I shouted out, I see a lot of people who I love. And that was totally spontaneous. It was all my sweetheart and my mom and dad and all my family members, all my friends, my crew member who sailed to Antarctica with me with his 30-year-old Antarctic shirt on, and all my crew members were there from all my friends, and all my New York friends were there. And I just started crying. I couldn't help myself. I was just crying. I stepped up on the dock, and there was Sonya with my new son. And I was crying and crying. And well, the picture that the media wanted was me greeting Sonya and my son for the first time. And that was the picture that they sent around the world. They sent it everywhere. And I heard that I was in every single media outlet in the whole U.S., all at one time, with that picture, and all over the whole world. And they made this great story, and they titled it New York Sailor Credits Love for History-Making Voyage. And I dedicated the voyage to my mom and dad, who gave me the family love and strength that I needed as a child to look out into the world and give love. And they were there for me in the end. When I couldn't leave because I couldn't get the money for all these things, I begged my mom and dad, and they gave me twice the money that I asked for because they knew that it wasn't enough. And that allowed me to leave on the voyage. So I dedicated the voyage to Mom and Dad. And so it was just a totally emotional, beautiful thing. And my whole message from the voyage was love gave me the power to do what no man has ever been able to do. Humankind is evolving, and it's through the power of love. And it was from my parents that, you know, so it was a great trip. And how did I adapt after being for years never seeing a human to suddenly being in New York City? Well, I stepped off the boat. I never noticed any motion sickness or anything at all. And I stepped off the boat. I just stepped into the most beautiful love that I've ever imagined in my life, with everyone saying I love you and me saying I love you. And I just couldn't stop crying for hours. Everyone was there my whole life. It was a beautiful experience.
Well, this group is called Media for Humanity, and we're talking a lot about humanity. And love is, you know, they say love is stronger than gravity. and I think you're sharing that right now. I don't know if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask Reid here now. Yes.
Okay.
Were there any moments where you just wanted to give up and you just thought, I shouldn't have done this, or I wish I could go home?
There was never even close to a moment like that. I never ever considered giving up, or thought I should have given up, or that I wasn't going to do it.
So perseverance and dedication are two words that are helpful for all of us to give consideration to on something that we're passionate about.
Well, yes, of course, and anyone who has something that they're passionate about is very, very lucky, because that will bring you in touch with all these deeper things. So if people have passion, and especially passion for helping others, because what I've known all my life, but realizing it in a very heavy way, is really something different. When we say all of humanity is one, what does that mean to everyone? Like, you think, well, you're an individual. So when you think about your individual self, that's a small thing. And when you think about how you're connected to all of humanity, and you know you are, we all live and breathe the same air, we're all on the same planet, we're all one, flowing in with one essence, and we're one. And when you realize that you're one with all of humanity, it was my realizing I was one with humanity, and that allowed me to access such a great love, because I was giving my love to humanity, and I could see the cycle of energy, and that made so much more love come back to me, and that gave me the energy and the strength and the guidance to make the voyage possible. That's why the message that the media picked up when they said New York City sailor credits love for history-making sea voyage, I was able to use the media to multiply my love worldwide. My love, I say, it became the world love. And that was, to me, the true success of the voyage. I realized a year and a half at sea that I had already broken all the records. I'd already gone so far beyond that, and that didn't even mean that much to me. What came to mean so much to me is, what was I doing good for humanity? And as I realized that what was helping me survive the voyage was my love that I was giving humanity, in deep meditation, in meditation with every breath. So when I breathed in all the pain and hurt and anger and hate. And I breathed it in, it came in like greasy smoke, and it went inside of me. And yet, I have the power to transmute, because I'm a being who's reaching for enlightenment, and I'm filled with rainbow light. And all that nastiness comes into me, and I transmute it into love and light. And then when I breathe out, I send it to all of humanity. And then I breathe it in again. I breathe in all the pain and sorrow, and I breathe it back out to humanity, and I give them love. So I do it with every breath. And just try that sometime, and then you'll find out how connected you are to a greater spirit than yourself. And you realize that you're one with humanity, and by loving humanity, you're given far more strength than by thinking only of your individual self.
And that breathing that you're speaking about, and as you know, I'm a yoga instructor. Well, you might not know, I became a yoga instructor over the past years. In any case, but yoga means one, being in union with one, right? Mm-hmm. And breathing, the pranayamas are so integral to our being and to our life. Media for Humanity. Anybody have anything they'd like to share or ask Reid while we're here right now? Okay, you want to pass this down?
Given your prior experience with pirates, and now recently with the recent surge of pirates in the general area of the ocean, Indian Ocean, were you able to encounter any of them during your journey?
A lot of people wrote me and warned me and worried about pirates and this and that. Most of the time, I was so far out at sea, I was out of reach of pirates. So I just stayed so far out at sea that I wasn't near to where the pirates are, because they have speedboats and they're working close to the shore. And you know, where I am, way out in the middle of the ocean, I hardly saw any boats at all. So I was really never worried about pirates.
Pier. Okay, thank you.
I have a million questions, but for those of us who don't have a boat, how would you recommend having this type of journey for just your everyday person?
Well, again, a lot of things that I think about idealistically are kind of easier said than done. Because since I've gotten back, I've come down from the exalted state that I was in. I was alone at sea for years, and I controlled my mind. I didn't allow myself to think of anything. If I did think of my sweetheart, I saw her as a goddess who had great powers, who was enlightening me and helping me. I never thought I blocked my thoughts of everything. And I turned my thoughts, I stopped my thoughts so that I could enter into a higher state. And I became one with the ocean, and I connected with the God of all of humanity, in all the different ways that humanity sees God. And I connected with that great nothingness that is everything. And I entered into an exalted state that lasted for 24 hours a day, all the time. The moment I wake up, I was going, oh God, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for everything that you're doing for me. Now, I know that I could say, well, in your life, try to have love for everything you do. Try to have love for everything you do. Look at every single person, no matter who they are, and give them love. And the people who need the love the most are the people who are aggressive and mean towards you, because those were the people who didn't have family love. They were the people who didn't have the love that gave them the strength, and they're aggressing on you in some way, one way or the other. Those people need love. So for someone who doesn't have a boat and can't go out into that magical environment to enter into that state of consciousness, but you know, in every single culture through the history of man, there were always those people who went out from their society and lived in nature for periods of time. And they all did it. The shamans, the Indians, it was what Buddha did to become enlightened. Jesus has his story in the wilderness. And there's the wilderness and the being alone, the monks that were in prayer all the time, the yogis that were in caves, when you're alone and then you connect with the greater spirit. But we're here in society, and very few people have the chance to be alone. The calling to be alone is a rare thing, and I feel so lucky that I found that and that I was able to have that experience. It was great. But for everyone else, I think the best vehicle we can have is to think of love towards everyone all the time. Try to share your love, try to give your love out, and try to look at what you can do for the best for all of humanity by sharing your love. And then opportunities will come to each person according to how they are and where they are in their life.
And one of the things that always struck me is that, you know, in most of our life here on a daily basis, it's a matter of how fast can we go. And in essence, what I saw in what you were doing, it's not how slow you could go, but to a certain degree, how slow but concentrated on a vision. But in essence, you know, we have a lot of yachting races, and people get a lot of money, and they try to get their boats, you know, into the tip-top speed condition. Going along with, you know, in essence, finding yourself or going away and spending some time alone and so on and so forth. Your trip for that amount of time, because part of the victory is the amount of time to actually endure that amount of time at sea. So what do you think in mindset of slowing our society down? I think it's happening personally. I think we're becoming, you know, say shop local, you know, lots of environmental conditions are saying, you know, let's think about how we're getting some drinking water in our own neighborhood, how we're feeding ourselves, let's not take food, you know, and spend lots of money and oil and gasoline to get it to, you know, the other part of the world. Do you see that part of your mission is to help people think of life in that kind of a way?
Well, I'm not real sure exactly what's happening in the world right now. because I've been gone for 3 years and I didn't have any news at all. I knew nothing. So if you're telling me that stuff, that sounds like good news. Paul will remember that maybe 10 years ago or more, I went to sea for 200 days, which was the longest man and woman sea voyage in history at that time. Myself and the lady who went to sea with me, we planned to go 200 days. That was the longest sea voyage. But our what we did was we drew a turtle as big as the South Atlantic Ocean with our course. Because I'm an artist, so I had the idea to do this conceptual project to draw a turtle with our course. And the message was the story of Aesop's fable, the tortoise and the hare, to go slowly but surely instead of fast and brash. That was my message. So before we left, Associated Press did a story about it. They took the map we gave them with the turtle that I'd drawn in the ocean, and the rap that I just gave you was the rap I gave them, and that story went around the world. So I saw that as my message to the world, to look at the ancient wisdom and to go slowly but surely instead of fast and brash. I also have been into spiritual healing all my life in a lot of ways, and that was a lot how I was able to succeed on the voyage, to be able to live at sea so much longer than any man ever had without getting sick and without getting hurt. Of course, I had a lot of practice at that, and I had been studying that for many years. I saw the Odyssey of the Sea Turtle, whatever it was, 10 or 15 years ago, as a healing voyage for the world. Because when people heard that story and saw that picture in the media, all they had to do was simply hear the story of Aesop's fable in the modern voyage at sea and see the picture, and then anyone from any walk of life could understand the message. But the process of contemplating that message takes your mind away from the news of the world of the day and away from the life and times now, and takes you on a mythological journey to contemplate that, and that is a healing process. So the going slowly and the understanding of the Odyssey of the Sea Turtle was to remind the world to go slowly but surely, and it was a healing voyage.
So what I'm going to say is that we're going to go slowly, in the sense of, I know how important the opportunity to help educate all of us is for you, that sharing, that love. And this is our first time with you in our studio since, you know,
just before we departed, yeah,
160 days ago or something. And so I like this kind of a forum for us, and to bring in more maybe young people and older people, and maybe people from other countries and so on and so forth. So let's see if we can do some more programs with sharing.